I had a sleepless night. Last night I couldn't sleep at all. I was so scared. I don't know how many cigarettes I smoked. Because I remember like last night, like most of my friends were there at my place. Like they were just there like as they usually do. And they were busy like playing PlayStation. I just wish like I could just press the escape button, or if there was an emergency door to life, emergency exit, just go through that door and just go and be on the planet on my own, you know, without stressing about this thing. The closer we were driving, a few kilometers, like we were heading to the center, it was like I'm digging my own grave, you know?
Fear is natural. He asked me last night, that do you want to do this? So I said, oh yeah, I will. Then I doubted that. No, I'll not do it.
Decisions like this, they're not made overnight, you know? They're well processed, and because you have to prepare your mind, your heart and soul. Because the thing is this, if you just say you're gonna do it, and then you find out that, wait a sec, I'm positive. So now you have to struggle with how you yourself gonna accept it, and how your family gonna accept it, you know, how people that you are impacting gonna accept it. So now there's more question that comes afterwards.
You see, I have a fear living privately. I don't want to be alone here.
It's for my own benefit at the end of the day. Because like this is my life and I've got only one life to live. I might come from the smallest house, but I'm coming from the biggest home.
My name is Gustav, but here in the township I'm living in, I'm known as Spook. I'm originally from Free State, which is in the center east of South Africa. But I've been living here for 4 years. So this is like my second home now. Masiphumelele is found in Cape Town, Western Cape. So this was a forest, but it ended up becoming a registered township. It was the 5th township registered in Cape Town called Site 5. That's where the name came from, Site 5. But the people, as they united, they end up calling it Masiphumelele. That means we will succeed.
I'm from Kailicha, Cape Town, and I'm part of Wavin Collective Crew. Mainly, most of our stories, like we focus on our community in Kailicha, but not only in Kailicha, and we focus mainly like in all Cape Town townships. Like Kailicha, like is the biggest township here in Cape Town. So Kailicha, I think, is the place that you can get like everything that you want. If you want stories like from black suburbs, you can get it from Kailicha. If ever like you want like middle class, you can get them in Kailicha. And if ever like you want the poor of the poorest, you can still get them here in Kailicha.
In South Africa, you find a lot of segregation. There's places that are better, so they are known as the suburbs. That's where you find most rich people living. So there will be white people, mostly. So people who live in township, there will be black people. Mostly they are regarded as poor people. Africans, especially as you find them here in Massey, they don't even know that they're poor. You come to them and say, you're poor, you don't have food, you don't have da-da-da. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm satisfied. They're always warm welcoming you. Even if they had the last food in their house, they're gonna give them to you anyway, because they're a giving community. There's a lot of needs in this community. I really felt that I wanted to be part of that. And we believe that the cornerstones are the people that can be, the assets, people that can really help meet the needs, locals. So I've been really working with men who've been reaching out to other men. I call them my leaders, I call them my friends. They call themselves mighty men of Massey, though, Massey is really beautiful. We have a lot of issues in Massey. We have drug abuse, we have alcohol abuse, but the one that is really big is HIV.
Africa still remains the epicenter of the AIDS epidemic, particularly this part of the region, sub-Saharan Africa, where over 70% of the new infections actually occur in this part of the world. And then more specifically, the hotspot is South Africa, where nearly 5.6 million people are living with HIV. That is the largest number of people in one particular country living with HIV in the world.
So South Africa is actually categorized as hyper-epidemic country. We have the adult population, about 17% of the adult population, average, are living with HIV and AIDS. Just about 29% of pregnant women who go to antenatal clinics are actually HIV positive.
Some of the provinces actually carry the burden of disease for South Africa. We were talking about a prevalence of coming up to 40%, with some districts reporting above 40%. So, coming up to every second woman in that district will have HIV.
HIV is like many other conditions that disproportionately affects marginalized populations. And if you don't have power, you can't necessarily affect change that's necessary to prevent new transmissions and to treat the disease.
When you get there, you meet with the counselor. But then when you're sitting with the counselor and explain, the whole process and everything, so it becomes more intense, right? And then they will ask you a question, do you really, really want to do that? So that's why you have to process these questions before you go, So then you are ready for whatever comes. But you want to be ready though.
I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. Have you had HIV tests done before?
I had one long time.
Long time
4
ago.
years ago.
4 years ago, okay. This is just for the records
It's
here.
okay.
There are no results or anything. It just says that will say that it's, from a legal perspective, you come into a clinic. So, your first name?
SIBU SISO. It's a beautiful name.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a zero name. Are you African or English?
Yes.
Which one?
Yes, both. There's a whole questionnaire that we're going to go through. So it will be a personal, one-on-one explanation. If you've been living dangerously, or if you've been living with HIV in any way, if you've taken any chances or anything, that's what we're going to be taking a look at.
How deep do you go?
Pardon?
How deep do you dig?
Well, it can get a little bit hairy, but we'll see. I'll try as fast as possible not to get too deep. Okay.
Let's go deep.
Most gay men have never heard of gay compromise syndrome. Gays with that illness look normal. Their problem is they've lost the ability to fight off infections and cancer. Of course, the main question is why only gays get the disease.
In the very early days of the pandemic, even before people began to recognize that it was in existence, there was this whole knowledge around HIV being based in the US, that it was a gay epidemic and all the rest of it.
The risk for AIDS is not being a homosexual man, and the risk for AIDS is not any of the other groups. The risk is the behavior.
By the time in the late 80s, scientists really came to recognize that, people are losing a lot of weight, there's this whole, the diarrhea, what we called slim disease. It took a little while before scientists put 2 and 2 to make 4. I lost, I think, a third of my primary school class. During the 80s and early 90s, a lot of people lost, a lot of lives gone.
My own activism around HIV was in the 80s. And in those days, the issue really that we confronted was within an apartheid state. HIV and AIDS has really the great potentials of creating the division further and racializing it as a black issue. We were pursuing the issues around how do you really bring HIV and AIDS as a public health issues, de-racialize it, and actually deal with it as a human rights issues. We were dealing with, on a race basis, being black and white. The colleagues that we're working with were actually dealing with the issues around homophobia.
In the early 1980s, this was a disease of people who, at that time, were on the edge of social acceptance, let's say. Men who have sex with men, people who were injecting drugs.
But we had concurrences because both of us were really faced with a disease which is dumb, doesn't know color, doesn't know anybody, but actually creating that fear.
I never really liked white people because of what happened. So when I was 8, there was all the black people, community where I was from, they were marching, recruiting everyone to vote for ANC, which is Nelson Mandela's party. But then they were like, all these big trucks of white people came and police, and they said, go home, stop what you're doing. I was all the time. And so, but they didn't listen, and they kept staying there. So they started shooting at us. So everyone was like, running into houses. So my grandma came and grabbed me because we were watching the whole thing. She came and grabbed me and went with me in the room, and then went to the bathroom and locked the bathroom, and then she was holding my mouth because I was really threatened by what was happening. Grandma, people are running, and then all of a sudden it's like... So that's the memory I have of white people. When Nelson Mandela got out of prison, everyone thought, okay, the king is back. It's time to take over the land. He said, okay, you know what? You're just gonna go ahead and hit white people and do the same what they did to us. So Nelson Mandela said, no, you don't do that. You forgive. People had wounds, and Nelson Mandela just said, cover them up. You know, it's like, you know, you get a wound and you just cover it. It's not healed.
Post-1994, obviously, we were grappling with the issues around what does it mean for the country. And then you can imagine that we've just celebrated the whole Uhuru, and we think, you know, there was a lot of thinking around how the country is going to look like, you know, the issues around the primary health care, what will be the change, and then suddenly being told that there's this big problem.
President Mandela has attended his final cabinet meeting in Pretoria. President-elect Thabo Mbeki will announce the new government before his inauguration next week.
I think at the political level, there were a lot of challenges. I mean, the president is on record as having questioned the idea about whether HIV/AIDS causes AIDS.
You see, when you ask the question, does HIV cause AIDS? The question is, does a virus cause a syndrome? How does a virus cause a syndrome? It can't.
The feeling we were getting was that there was a lot of speak about an African solution. We're going to deal with this in our own way. We don't need the West to tell us how to deal with this epidemic. Whether they were even admitting it was an epidemic or not is another story.
It seemed to me that we could not blame everything on a single virus.
Him and his Minister of Health at the time, Minister Mantu Shabalala, their level of denialism was so severe and so high that they were causing the deaths of many, many people by not allowing them access to antiretroviral medication.
And I think very soon we should be able to put some of these traditional medicines on the shelves so that people can use the traditional medicines and they are cheaper than the antiretrovirals.
There was almost like an unwillingness to believe science. It was as if science, we have our own science, you know. Thabo Mbeki was somehow, I don't know, he's going to make his own rules, like science didn't exist here. It existed everywhere else. And even when there were hundreds and thousands of people dying all over the place.
I've got a brother who's HIV positive. And he contracted HIV in 2008. When I heard that he got HIV, I did strong, first of all. At first I was very angry. Like, how can it be so stupid, go and sleep around without using a condom, especially like in this generation. And he knows that this thing it's in your face. You know, and there's also we've got a hospice in our area where you see these people are dying of HIV. So we grew up in that thing when we were still small. He was down and out, very sick, extremely sick, and the reason why he got so sick was the fact that he did not want to accept that he was HIV positive. You know?
One thing that helps HIV needs to really grow bigger in mass and be contagious is we have what we call sangomas, which is traditional healers, traditional doctors. What they do is they encourage people to stop going to take their medications as soon as they start coming to them for help, because their medication has to do with ancestral worships.
So near se benzongo. Near se benzongo. Wetlands, ne?
Yeah, the green wetlands.
Oh, Dearborn. Okay. Going to a clinic or a seemingly modern or Western healthcare environment is kind of renouncing this traditional sense of cultural identity. So that's where a big complication comes in as well, because people are just torn because they want to be honest and they want to know the truth about their medical condition, but there's these kind of competing truth claims. like a medical perspective and then a traditional African perspective. It's difficult for people to know who they can trust.
First thing that I need to tell you is that as far as confidentiality is concerned, what gets done in here stays in here. All right, and it's your constitutional right.
Witnesses, you said that.
Yes, and it's your constitutional right for me to ask them to leave when we do the testing. Okay. So
if I create a testing.
Pardon?
If I create a testing.
If you agree to test, even for the conversation beforehand, you've quite within your rights to say, would they please leave?
And I can turn the camera off too, just tell me and I'll put it on.
Okay. All right. When we're doing this test, we are going to be using a rapid HIV test. I'm not going to open it right now, just in case you decide not to go that route.
My uncle he went and tested by a local clinic. And what happened is the doctor told him that he is HIV positive, and when he was like completely in denial. When he got home, he said that it's impossible for him to have gotten HIV, you know. And then he went to a Sangoma. A Sangoma told him that he doesn't have HIV, he's just being jinxed by whoever. Sangomas never tell who the person is. So he actually believed the Sangoma. And by then he completely refused to take the ARVs. My uncle chose to believe what he understands. That's in that case what the traditional doctor said. So he ended up dying because he refused to take the medication.
Then in Toronto, in 2006, in Toronto, at the AIDS conference, the exhibition stand for South Africa had garlic and olive oil and the African potato on a shelf. The minister was saying, you know, garlic and olive oil can manage your HIV while people were dying.
You will see that the group that has been working on garlic, on lemon, because lemon has got a lot of selenium.
So their messaging, or their mixed messaging, I think was detrimental to the rate of the increase of HIV and the incidence levels must have been, I mean, that was the highest that we've had.
This is the beginning of struggles throughout Southern Africa to ensure that we get drugs. We call on the PMA to announce the sale of AZT to the government at 180 Rand per 1 month course for a pregnant woman or rape survivor now. 180 Rand now.
We used protest, civil disobedience and the court, as well as fighting with pharmaceutical companies to lower their prices.
They spend more on Viagra than they spend on our health.
Community Media Trust started by Jack Lewis and Zaki Ahmed with the Treatment Action Campaign, which was a huge organization which fought for antiretrovirals to be made available in the public health service in South Africa during a time of huge denialism by the government at the time. It started out as very much as a right to health, a right to live, because at the time so many people were dying. It was a very obvious, these are the medications that help you live with HIV and the government's not giving them to us. So we had to fight basically for the right to access to medication in the country. After the years of denialism and the years of not getting medication, what that did was it spread the disease faster than anything else could have.
I've only got the junction. Here we go. Now it's 4 more likely that a woman would pick it up, or she's in much more danger of picking it up, because semen would stay in the vagina for a longer period of time. Okay, if the man is infected. Whereas the length of time that a penis is in the vagina and in contact with vaginal fluid is a much shorter period of time. Okay, because the semen stays in the vagina for much longer.
You'll find that the epidemic in South Africa is a feminine epidemic, particularly at around the ages of 25 to 35, where the highest levels of infection happen in the females. But that's the same across the continent, what we call feminization of the epidemic.
I think in many of our societies, gender relationships are very, very important. The challenge is that if you have a gender relationship where women do not have a voice and they're not able to actually negotiate aspects of the sex and how that sex should actually happen, then you have a serious problem.
It's in our minds as women that I can't challenge a man. A man is a man. A man is the head of the house. So I think it's power when it comes to prevention or condom usage. That's where power comes in, because if a guy says, no, I don't want to use a condom, let's just do this, you will do it because he's the one who's bringing everything for you at the end of the day. He buys clothes, he gives you money, so you just can't say no. You feel like you can't say no.
We've had one of the highest rape statistics in the world. They did a study where 1 out of every 4 men that they interviewed in the study admitted to rape in one way or the other. Knowingly. So it's just, the stats are ridiculous. It's very, very depressing. And that's also, if they're basing it on the reports, what about all of the women that don't report? You can triple those numbers.
Women were never going to get to a point where they were going to be able to negotiate safer sex because of the sexual discrimination, because of the gender inequality, because of the second-class status of women. There's still patriarchy, and there's still male supremacy, and it's still ingrained and internalized in us. There's still women who may not be commercial sex workers in my community, but are certainly transacting risky sex for something, whether it's a good meal or a place to stay, or just to have a man on your arm for a night, or to have somebody just treat you right for a little while. That we're still willing to take those risks because of those identities and because of those set and established ways of being in relationships that we have not yet broken out of, regardless of the risk that HIV poses to us.
It's about economic independence. The levels of poverty have to change. Who earns money has to change. The level of education has to change until young girls are educated enough to get a job and look after themselves so that they can deal with those issues by themselves or make an informed decision. Then all of those issues will remain the same. Only once you have your own money can you say, no, I'm not going to sleep with you because I don't need airtime.
Because they know, okay, if I promise her that I'll buy her Brazilian hair, I'll make her beautiful than she is, then she'll go for me. That's why you see a lot of us like craving sugar daddies with a lot of money. Because we want to be beautiful. And I just think we are beautiful the way we are. We don't need extra beauty. Because without that makeup, then, or without that Brazilian hair, without this weave, will a guy come to you? Okay, yes, a guy comes to me because of this weave, but what if I take it off?
Take it off.
At night. Not now. Don't be silly.
Most of the relationships are men, women, that men need to be part of the targeting around the messaging, so greater involvement of men, making sure that we've got gender equality as we program further.
So, what is our goal as men? What is our goal, right? What is our vision?
I was such a ladies' man, quite a ladies' man. So I didn't really respect women. I didn't see value at them at all. So because of that, I would date a girl, and then if I'm dating this one, I would look for another one, if I'm dating this one. So I really never respected them, but I was really looking for answers. I was really looking for answers and saying, I want something that can make me to be me and to be a faithful guy, learn how to be faithful. I started having a group called Men Up, Men Up. I call it Men Up. Is them say, we tired of the way we're living. So they say, we don't want to cheat on our wives. And the single man who says, we don't want to be, messing around or sleeping around. We want to be pure.
The same thing you will do to your sister, do it to the woman you meet in the street.
The major social norms that we try to address, and these are difficult ones, are expectations around what women should be, expectations about what men should be. Those are very, very difficult to challenge the stereotypes of motherhood, the stereotypes of a man being entitled to sex, being naturally promiscuous, etc.
HIV/AIDS in our context is no longer an issue of risk groups. It's not about people who are really having sex with commercial sex workers. It's not about men who have sex with men. It's not about people who are actually promiscuous. It is really related to heterosexual transmission. It's long-term relationships, people who are cohabitating on long terms, who actually regard themselves as low risk, and in a manner then they don't use condoms, and this is really where the HIV infection is coming in.
Do you use condoms?
I haven't had any sexual intercourse for a very long time. But I used to before. I mean, before I tested, I used to, and the stands were did, Okay. So that's why I was not sure what is happening.
In our surveys, if you ask people if they use condoms, they say yes. Then, do you use condoms every time? No. So there's also this issue of, yes, I use condoms most of the time. But, there's some nights, I've got my main girlfriend. I love this one, right? So we don't use condoms. But I use condoms with my other girlfriends. Like we call them spares and besties. You have your bestie, and then the spares are, you use condoms with the spares, because you don't know what other spares they may have. And it's totally acceptable to have a relationship like that, and then your bestie you don't use a condom. Because you two are faithful to each other. Faithful.
I think people first of all, to be honest with you, people are cheating outside, left, right, and center, And we have this person that really loves you, who's there for you through thick and thin. And then at the same time, there's this girl on the side who's always come with miniskirts, and yeah, you're always tempted, It's not like you love her, just that just a shake. And that is a problem out of that, and that's when the problem starts, because it's just a shake now, and then tomorrow, feelings develop between the two of you, between the shake and you, and then after that, for a very long time, you fall in love, and then you live a double life, Now you're lying to your girlfriend, you're also like lying to this side. And then the next thing, like maybe like
You
like,
see
also
another
this thing-
temptation.
And the problem is
What
like
do you
people don't know you're cute and all of that.
And what do you do?
I'm like, okay.
Come to Papa.
I also don't want to disappoint them, maybe like make them feel as if like I'm a loser or something. I'm like,
So
okay.
you're doing it for them?
Yeah, in a way.
No, be honest and tell him.
I'm not alone, Mary, come on.
Yeah, he's so quiet.
So what does a person with HIV look like? They look like you and me and everybody else until they get very sick. People living with HIV infection, at least during the chronic phase of infection, which in an untreated person can last maybe as long as 10 years, looks healthy. They don't feel sick. You wouldn't know that that person has HIV infection.
Now, on average, most of these people then, if people don't get treated for HIV and AIDS, people will progressively become ill and progressively they will die. On average, it takes about 10 years or so for people to be very sick. Probably after 10 years when they are sick, probably another 2 years, if they don't get any interventions, most people will actually die.
When we're testing in a clinic like this, we're not testing for the virus, we're testing for antibodies. If the test does come up positive and you're infected with the virus, it doesn't mean you're sick. Right? There's a difference between being infected with the virus, having HIV, and actually being sick with AIDS. That's when something else will come along. You'll have flu, TB, and your body can't cope with dealing with more than one virus or bacteria or whatever, more than one illness at a time. And that's when the HIV virus
Takes over.
It really takes over altogether.
Antiretrovirals is the term we use for the medicine to treat HIV. It's a retrovirus, so these are drugs against a retrovirus, antiretroviral. How do antiretrovirals work? They prevent HIV from copying itself or replicating. HIV is a virus that has a predilection for binding to a certain very important cell in our body, the CD4 cells. And it uses the machinery of the CD4 cell to make copies of itself, and in doing so destroys those cells. These cells are the managers of the immune system, and if your CD4 cell count gets too low, which is what happens in HIV infection, then you become susceptible to a host of infections that normally wouldn't affect anyone with a competent immune system or a functional immune system. Antiretrovirals block that replication process in the CD4 cell and therefore protects the CD4 cells from destruction and allows them to maintain at the normal level. In a person whose CD4 cells have been damaged by HIV and they have a very low count, by taking this medicine, their CD4 cells can replicate and grow back to near normal levels. It's very much like a Lazarus effect. You have these people who are near death, very low CD4 cell counts, and then with potent therapy, their immune system's able to heal and come back.
And then, of course, there was the groundbreaking research which shows that, treatment can be used as a means of prevention. We know the science behind antiretrovirals is that they work in the body to reduce the amount of virus, HIV virus. So even when somebody's on antiretrovirals, the viral load or the amount of virus of HIV virus in the blood never goes to zero. It's always there, but it's at a level which we call undetectable, and it means that it's less likely to be transmitted to the next person.
In fact, if you're on antiretrovirals from the very beginning, you will not spread HIV because your viral load will be so low. And there are PrEP studies now between serodiscordant couples, which is one living with HIV and one without. If the partner who doesn't have HIV is on PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis, ARV treatment, all the studies prove that there's a 90-odd% chance that they don't get HIV. It's not transmitted to them.
So the whole idea is that, okay, if we can get a huge number of people who are living with the virus on antiretrovirals, then maybe we reduce the chances of transmitting the virus onto the next person. So that's where we're saying, okay, treatment as prevention. South Africa has got the largest ARV treatment program in the world. 1.5 million people to date have ever been started onto ARVs.
Government has already made provision that every South African who's eligible to treatment, who will have a free treatment for the rest of their lives.
First and foremost is HIV testing. People have to know they have the infection to be treated and prevent transmitting to others, and they need to know if they don't have the infection to take advantage of prevention interventions. Early diagnosis is the key.
And the sense is that if every South African have an opportunity to test and know their status, this is going to be the fundamental element that was going to make a difference in the HIV epidemic. You see, you cannot have the benefit of a treatment unless you know your status.
You guys all know your HIV status?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Everyone's gonna say yes.
But the last time I went to go and test, it was in 2010.
That's what he said yesterday. He said 2010.
No, not 2010. It was last year.
When last year? Last year was last month. No, last year was last month. Give him a chance. Give him a chance.
In March. Then after that, then I went back after the middle period. That was in March.
What should be your period, my friend?
In June, I went back in June. Then still clean. Then after that, I am still until today.
He doesn't know that he's not lying to us, but he's lying to himself. He doesn't know that.
Mr. Casanova.
We're still lying though.
The baselines are very difficult to predict, but I think that from what we call the UN General Assembly Special Session reports that countries report on a regular basis, at any particular time, it was known that only 10% of the population actually knew their status at that particular point.
People don't know because they never tested. So, and they keep living life like they are negative.
Yeah, if you are negative, you are negative. If you are positive, you are positive. We don't change. Even if you are not going to test.
You've had an HIV test before, you say? Yes. And how long ago was that?
Somewhere around May.
Okay, and the result of that test?
It was negative.
Negative. Just a few questions here that will tell us whether you're living a lifestyle that puts you into
This is a fun party,
a
right?
risk
You
assessment.
want me to turn the camera?
No.
Or I can step out. We can step out of here.
No, it's okay.
Okay. It does get a bit hairy. Yeah. Have you ever shared needles or syringes with anyone using drugs or anything like that? I would say.
I didn't use anything except heroin. I was kidding. I didn't use anything.
Right. Are you sexually active?
Meaning sleeping?
Yeah.
When I first? No, I don't. No, I'm not.
Right. Okay. And have you been in the last 12 months?
Sleeping?
Yeah.
No.
No. Okay. So not in the last 12 months.
Yeah, I do different things, you know.
Do you sweat at night? No. Okay. So you haven't had a fever in the last little while. I'm talking about a fever that probably stays there for weeks on end. Yeah, but if these things are not there, then you don't have AIDS. Probably not AIDS because it's the signs and symptoms are not there for AIDS. At the moment, AIDS definitely no. Virus maybe yes.
In a recent HIV counselling and testing campaign, the aim was to test 15 million South Africans. But to tick a box and say that you've tested 15 million people or 10 million or how many ever is not enough. It's not just good enough to go for an HIV test once when government has a huge campaign and they aim to test millions of people. It should be something that's part of the social fibre of communities of going for regular HIV testing. It needs to become part of that social fibre.
There was a general assumption in South African society that what we needed to do to prevent HIV was to get everybody knowing how to prevent HIV. The logic was simply that if people know that HIV causes AIDS, that AIDS can kill you, and that you can prevent HIV by wearing a condom or not having sex or being faithful to your partner, which is not true, but that if people knew that they would then change their behavior.
Condom is number one. It's my money in my wallet, and then the first thing when I open my wallet is a condom that I see.
And using a condom, and what if it breaks, what's going to happen?
You should buy condoms, not use the government condoms, you know?
What's the difference between a government condom and the one you buy? It's the same thing.
It's the same thing, but the government condom is too thick. You just like pump like 3 times, 4 times, and then maybe like you try to change positions, and then it's dry, you know? Come on. And I don't like to play like dirty games, you know, because like I don't have like the other life like to play about, you know. This is my only life, and I want to keep this life, live a positive life, like so that I can create a legacy and for the next generation to see, you know. So I need to play clean all the time, you know.
But you know you're supposed to still get tested every 6
I
months.
know. That's why I say I'm arrogant in that part, because I know that I was supposed to be testing each and every time.
Play clean, and in what way, my friend? By sleeping with one chick or by sleeping with 2 chicks a week?
By using a condom.
Using a condom.
Is there a particular reason why you don't use a condom? Too small, do they break easily?
No, it's not that, to be honest. Like,
you know how to use it?
yes.
Okay, so it's just sometimes it's in the heat of the moment you just don't use it. Okay, that's absolutely normal, and lots of folk do that. Okay, do you think that you've been at risk of being infected with the virus, either through sexual contact, using needles that somebody else has used?
No needles.
No needles,
No.
definitely not. Okay. You don't think your partner's been unfaithful? I have no idea. Okay, now that's the second time I've asked you there, but that's good.
There were very high levels of knowledge around HIV, very high levels of knowledge, especially among young people, about what causes HIV, how you can prevent it, etc. And yet, their behavior in all of the surveys that were done was still very much skewed towards high risk. And the majority of new infections were still coming from young people. So if it was true that knowledge alone could prevent HIV, then we should have turned the tide on HIV about 15 years ago. The fact of the matter is that knowledge on its own is never going to change behavior.
We can see you.
This is how we test. This is how we test.
Girls.
We just make girls pregnant, and then she must go and test.
And
if
she
she
comes
comes
back
back,
negative.
then,
You know you're negative.
then I know I'm negative. You know, this is how we test, like in the hood. Just make a girl pregnant, and then
you know you
if she comes back negative, then now you know you sorted. You know, and if she comes back like the plus side, hey, it's a problem. You know.
When was the last time you were tested, Stevie? Be honest.
To be honest with you, it was not 2 years back. It was last year in March.
So you're due. You're due every 6 months.
I know. I know. I know.
We did a literature review and some focus group discussions to see what were the barriers to testing, why were young people not going to test. And what we found is that there were 4 main fears that were standing in their way. The first fear was quite simply fear of self-knowledge. It's knowing that you have done something that has got you HIV. So the knowledge itself of what you've done. The second one was, of course, we're quite familiar with the concept of fear of death and dying. So, AIDS is still associated, even though the treatment rollout has been so effective, with illness and death. The third and fourth are closely linked, and they're also quite familiar. The fear of discrimination. Firstly, from your family, so that your family won't understand. You don't want to tell your family. You're scared of how they're going to react. They're scared of how they're going to treat you. Are they going to throw you out of the house, etc. and then fear of the response of friends and community. So your social setting, reacting negatively towards you, denying you opportunity, treating you badly, alienating you, etc.
If you have to confront the fact that you may be someone who's doing something that puts you at risk for HIV infection that the rest of society may not endorse. So you may be a man having sex with men, you may be injecting drugs, you may be a woman who's having multiple sexual partners, these sorts of things. If that's a problem that you can't face and society is burdening you with that, it can make it difficult to go and get an HIV test.
And once you have this form, it's your responsibility what you do with it. So, revealing status is something that not everybody wants to do, positive or negative. Unfortunately, it does have a stigma. It's not like blood pressure or any of these other things.
The real issue around the stigma with HIV and other STDs and unintended pregnancies and women's sexuality and all other kinds of beliefs around sexual behavior and sexual expression is that the real stigma is around how we deal with sex, around how we approach sexual conversation, sexuality, sexual identity, sexual expression, sexual pleasure. All of that gets stigmatized.
I mean, I guess because, again, it's connected to something that is, in some ways, stigmatized or demonized, that the connection to HIV and AIDS is this idea of like sexual promiscuity or having many partners, and people are not sharing their status before they have a sexual relationship.
We also have to make sure we're addressing the stigma just around illness. How we use or misuse the word normal in the context of health and well-being.
So the person who's infected actually gets into this what we call personal stigma, where you then stop doing things and going out and even seeking access to care. I know people who said they'd rather die than go and get treatment.
When we have conversations about how are we going to end white supremacy or how are we going to end white racism, well, it's not going to be black and brown folks that end it. It will be the white folks for whom that racism is a benefit. And it's the same thing around feminism and gender equality, right? Women are not going to be the ones to end sexism if men don't end sexism among men. Well, it's the same thing. While the presence, the respect, the love, the acknowledgement, the celebration we have for the strength and for the beauty in people living with HIV who step up and step out, it's not up to them to stop the stigma. It is up to us.
Would you take an HIV/AIDS test?
Sitting where I sit, again, HIV test or not, I think is irrelevant to the matter. It might be dramatic and make newspaper headlines.
But would it not set an example? The president taking an AIDS test?
No, but it's setting an example within the context of a particular paradigm.
What I need for you to do for me right now is, after having gone through that, you wanting to test.
Honestly, I don't know. I feel like it's still, I don't know. It's mentally for me, because I made this decision that when I get my girlfriend, then I want to go do this. So I haven't. But now I have a girlfriend at the moment.
Okay, well, you need to go and think about it carefully, because as a role model, it is not a bad idea to have the test done. Being a role model and actually having the test done is one thing. Revealing the result of the test is another thing again. And is there any thought in your mind that you might test positive? Is that what's keeping you from testing?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't know, but I don't want to think like, I don't know. But I don't
Okay, well, I'm going to just mention, because that's sometimes there's an underlying, maybe I am. It is a scary thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I don't know. I just don't know, to be honest.
What I don't understand is number one is like, it's when people are dying of AIDS. And then like, I don't understand like why people don't like just go and get their medication there because it's free at the end of the day. So that's what I don't understand. That's what I don't understand.
People don't want to be seen at that hospitals. They don't want to be seen at the hospitals, and they're still denialism, and then there's still stigma.
Many people still choose to keep their HIV/AIDS status a secret. Gugu Dlamini was murdered after revealing her HIV/AIDS status.
I think of the stories of the bravery of women like Gugu Dlamini, who was a young woman in KwaZulu-Natal who was fed up with the discrimination and didn't want to die in shame and in silence, and disclosed her status publicly.
She was an activist who joined the Treatment Action Campaign in KZN, and then openly in some public event said that she's living with HIV, and very shortly thereafter. First she was harassed. She went through extreme stigma from her community because she was open about her HIV status, and then eventually she was beaten to death by her own community. It was a straight up stigma related beaten to death because you're living with HIV. And I mean that was many years ago, and it was the very first TAC t-shirt had Gugu Dlamini on the back of it. So I always relate the t-shirt to her story. It's almost like that level of stigma caused that t-shirt because we wanted to say we're all HIV positive. Who are you gonna beat now? You know, everybody's wearing one.
We have to acknowledge and live in the light of what makes us different, but we have to do our work at what makes us common and what brings us together. And that's the same way that we're going to address stigma in HIV and in sexuality and in people's rights and in people's dignity. When a sister's sitting next to me who is just as fly and as beautiful and as engaging and doing, all of her own ambitions, going to school, getting the job she wants, doing the work that she thinks is the career path for her, and then disclosing that she's HIV sends a different message that resonates with women in a different way.
Our flagship television show is called Siyanqoba, which it means overcome in Zulu. So we started the show as a way to normalize just talking about HIV, talking about living with HIV. We tried to change HIV from being having the stigma of being the sexually transmitted disease with all the model issues that come along with that, and try and normalize it to be just a chronic illness like diabetes, like high blood pressure, which can be managed and treated. If you see someone like you dealing with a health issue, it makes it easier to understand, makes it easier to absorb.
Molweni, namkelekile kuSiyinqoba Beat It, inkqubo ekhuthaza intetho ngezempilo, ngezesondo, ngeziyobisi, ezokuzinakekela umzimba nokuziphatha. UBeat It ujongana nemicimbi ebalulekileyo ngezempilo ezweni lethu. Ndingunokubonga Yawa, ndiphila ne-HIV.
As people who are living with HIV, we're always faced with the challenge where we have to disclose our status. Talking from experience, like it's not an easy thing.
I started hearing people gossiping around, and the gossip will come and to my ears, and people will come to me and say, hey, is it true that you're HIV positive? Or you hear people talking around like in groups. And there was this day, like I became like angry to a point where I stood on the street and I was like, okay, yeah, I am HIV positive, like get a life. What's up, Because I know many of you, they're HIV positive, but you're sitting there looking at me, talking about me and my daughter. But for many people, like especially young people, teenagers, it's not easy. But as you're growing up, you get used to it. You get to meet people who are HIV positive. You share stuff, you share your experiences. In that way, you learn from other people.
when I was tested, I was at the clinic. I was not sick. The sister asked me, do you want the test? I said yes. She told me that before I test you, I have to do some counseling. I told her I don't want counseling. Test me. I want to know my status. Okay, she said she do the test. Then we talking. Now, after some minutes, she's not talking. I asked what? She asked to me, when you are positive, what you gonna do? I said, I can't do anything. If I'm positive, I'm positive. Okay. She said, when the lines are like this, we are positive. So I said, okay. And I phoned my sister. I tell my sister, I did go to the clinic. They tell me I'm HIV positive. On over the phone. I want to make sure they are speaking the truth, really, because I know myself. I don't have a lot of boyfriends. I told myself I didn't go to Gauteng and also to Cape Town and also to Durban. I was staying at home. Others they said the HIV is in Cape Town and Joburg, and now I didn't go to Joburg where I'm getting the HIV.
I think 2 weeks after I tested for HIV, I was like, how do I deal with this? How long will I live? Will my daughter be HIV positive as well? How will she look? You have those things going through your mind.
If you had to have the HIV virus, it's not a death sentence. Okay. And there's a difference between having the virus and actually having AIDS. And having a general look at your state of health and so on, even if you have the virus, you certainly don't have active AIDS at the moment. Now, if you had sugar diabetes, if you had high blood pressure, TB, and you didn't take your treatment, and you didn't look after yourself, you can get sick and you can die. It's the same with the HIV virus. As far as that's concerned, it's no difference.
I will ask the doctor. I want to know how long I will live so that I prepare for my daughter before I die. He was like, no, you're not going to die, Nokubonga. I was like, no, don't lie. I'm sure maybe that's what you say to a lot of patients because you want them to feel better. Just tell me, when will I die? This thing, I'm sure it's like cancer. He was like, no. Then he started bringing me these people, showing me Abu Zaki Ahmad. He was like, look at this kid. He's been living with HIV for this long, all those things. It's like, oh, okay, now I see. I'll say today I'm strong, I'm who I am because of the people around me, who are surround me, organization that surrounds me, where I went and say, hey, I need information, I need to do this, you know. And even like young people who having issues, those are the people who build Nokubonga, who I am, because I had to listen to them, I had to learn from them. Since I've became open, like I've seen a lot and I've heard a lot and people have shared a lot of stories. My name is Nokubonga Yawa. I am the host for saying Ngoba Beat It, and I'm living openly with my HIV status.
My daughter is negative. My HIV is for my HIV, not for my daughter.
There was a guy we interviewed and he said, I think we are all HIV positive. It's up to you to find out if you're negative. And I was like, that's
as long as you don't know your status, you are HIV positive.
As long as you don't know your status, you're HIV positive.
HIV/AIDS treatment in South Africa is completely free. So all we really need to achieve is to make sure that every single person in South Africa knows their HIV/AIDS status.
HIV is here, it's now, it's all of us. The more people who test and the more we normalize the whole issue around HIV, then HIV-related discrimination will also come down.
I think for us is that you can't resolve the problem by biomedical intervention only. You really have to combine it with a very strong behavior and understanding what people need to do. But there are also very embedded social issues that has to be addressed as well.
So given the challenges of designing programs in Africa, how can we embed testing into the ordinary social fabric?
So for the last 15 years, I've been studying peer-to-peer influence and social influencers and how they spread behaviors through social networks and therefore through society. The science of social influence isn't new, but it's been going through an incredible transformation in recent years. Social influence was only observable to a very small extent prior to Facebook and Twitter and email and mobile phones that now give us data on not 1 or 2 people interacting in a conversation, but 250 million people sending messages that are time-stamped to the second. That kind of data can really give us an understanding about how information and behaviors are diffusing through social networks. This newfound ability is giving us really a new lens on human behavior. And I firmly believe that we're on the brink of a scientific revolution, and a revolution in our understanding of human behavior.
That person there has had over the period of time 3 different partners. And those 3 different partners that they have even just had 2 each. Okay, and if you've had, have you had more than 1 partner in the past?
Yeah.
Okay. And you've got another one over there, and she maybe has 2 others, and that one has 3, and that one has 2, and they each have 1, 2, say 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Can you see what's happening? Because in reality, what happens here now is that you're not sleeping with one person, and you haven't slept with one person as far as the virus is concerned. That's you, but in reality you've slept in with all that multitude that everybody else has also slept with, because the virus could have passed through any one or more than one of those people to get to you in the end. And that's a scary thought. It's a very scary thought, because
It's a scary thought, but it's a reality.
Oh, it's an absolute reality.
The epiphany for us in thinking about how to apply the science of social influence to the prevention of HIV transmission came when we really thought about what kind of a disease or virus HIV really is. It's a social disease. It spreads through social contact, which leads to sexual contact, and that's the primary mechanism through which HIV is transmitted. So we said to ourselves, why can't we reverse that logic and spread interventions against HIV the same way the disease spreads itself, namely socially? Why can't we think scientifically about spreading HIV testing through peer influence and social influence from person to person to person? Social support has a powerful and unique ability to directly counteract social stigma. In the end, this is a social disease. It needs a social cure.
The more we know and the more human connections that we make, the less stigma that we allow to flourish. So that's why I think normalizing conversation around sex and sexuality is really important.
This is my African mama. Hi.
Hello.
Mama Wendy.
I think, you know what happened in our community is that our locations are very small. So I think we've got a lot of HIV because of that. And then really, if you can come and talk about it and the other people are talking about it, everyone come, and then even the kids that are growing up, they can be very fluent about it, because I'm really worried about the kids. Maybe they are not fluent. Like for instance, I'm the mother. I don't want to lie to you. I'm scared to talk about it to my child. So if someone like you,
So probably
or
don't
like
speak
you,
about it, right?
Exactly, it's our culture. Can't help it. But even someone like you and you come and talk with her, she will know more than me, because when he came in my house, I'm not talking about it. So I know there won't be something wrong.
Enjoying it. Yeah. So the reason why social influence is so effective is first that we trust our friends and family more than any government organization or company billboard telling us how we should behave. If that advice comes from our friends or family members, we're much more likely to trust it. Secondly, our friends and family know us so much more intimately than an advertiser or the government does. So they know how to speak to us in a way that will most effectively motivate us to change our behavior.
And I think it's something that we're, like everybody really hungers for, is that connection with other people that's authentic. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I think people are looking for voices. They're looking for a way they can see the change that they want to see in their country and in their communities. That's why we're looking for guys like this who will be, social influencers, people who impact their community towards things that are life-giving, towards things that are positive, towards things that, just promote healthy ways of living.
So we've studied this question specifically. What are the characteristics of influencers in a society? And we have conducted multiple randomized experiments on hundreds of millions of people to get at the essence of how social influence moves behaviors through society. And we've really done this at population scale. And we've learned several things. First, it's not that there are one or two or three popular influencers in the world. Influencers are all around us. They're in our schools or in our community programs. They are particular people who are looked up to at work. They're you and they're me.
Certainly there are people who are just naturally charismatic, naturally open-hearted. But then we've also seen people develop into that kind of personality. And the big indicators for that have been really a sense of personal identity, knowing what people having an ability to understand themselves in context, and so they know who they are. They know the life they want to live. They know the change they want to see, and they're confident that their actions can actually influence that change.
So I started having a group called MENA. I've been really working with men who've been reaching out to other men. And they just meet under the trees. They talk about life together. They're accountable to each other. This is the issue, right? This is reality. This is it. It's out here. It's our enemy. So I really want them to know beyond that, hey, you guys need to get tested because it's good for you. It's good to know where you're at,
We're looking for local young leaders. We're looking for your friend, somebody that you look up to, your older brother or sister, somebody who lives in the same street as you, same social background as you, who's facing exactly the same social challenges that you are, but is responding to them in a different way.
We're waking up each and every day, like we're making films and we try to change people's lives and we try to change people's perspective on how to view life, and also like we try to heal people at the same time with the stories that we tell. And we tell these stories like these are stories from Kailicha. It is a place of dreams, and dreams are possible to be realized in Kailicha if ever you have like the good support of people around you, like for example like my team,
But I still remember the first time I met, I came to know CMT. When I came in, I was scared, but as much as I was scared, I wanted to do this for the community, for the rest of the young people in South Africa, to learn from my experience and learn from the story that I'll be sharing with them. I'll say today I'm strong, I'm who I am because of the people around me, who are surrounding me.
There's an old saying they used to say, when one hates, we're all hating, When one is rejoicing, we're all rejoicing. So it's more about them doing it as a unit.
We should all treat ourselves as if we are all HIV positive, Go there and support each other, So that the next person next to you who is HIV positive, because like if ever like we're gonna say like all these HIV positive people should go and do that, then like we are still like isolating them from the society. the entire society, we should all be part of it, you know. Go forward, fight for it.
So countries have to really take seriously this HIV prevention revolution that we're calling for and take it seriously. But it needs a number of actions and creating an authorizing environment where people are free, where people can talk liberally, where people can discuss sexual relations and their sexuality without feeling that they're abnormal in any way. And an environment where HIV testing is normalized and integrated into the normal being well.
We did a study, a randomized trial amongst 1.5 million people on Facebook to study how different types of messages spread social influence in a network. And what we found was that personalized invitations were about 3 times as effective as passive broadcast messages, like a status update, in changing people's behavior. The other big advantage to personalized invitations is what we refer to as stickiness. What's the likelihood that someone sticks with a behavior long after the influence message has been sent? It turns out that people are much more likely to stick with the behavior and make a habit out of it upon receiving a personalized invitation.
By the way, we're going on Friday. We're gonna all go get tested. I hope you guys come.
To be honest, okay, I will come. It will be a quantum leap. I'm coming.
Okay.
No, like, I should know, like, sooner than later. I've been, like, asking my girlfriend, like, for a very long time, like, we should go and test, we should go and test, we should go and test.
Guys, I asked them many times, I said, you sure, my guys? I said, you sure? I asked them during the day, and they said, yeah. And I met them again even. I said, listen, I'm telling you sure. And they said, yeah, sure, right? And then they started saying, but I'm scared. And I said, this does no.
For high blood pressure, sugar, diabetes. Okay, not ready to either. Okay, you make it all really easy. Okay, so you've got that. Do you have any questions?
I really feel like this was good. Questions you had. The questions you had were really good. So then that's it? That's all you asked?
Basically, that's it. Then you just need to decide then whether you want it to be tested now or whether you'd rather wait then and do it with your girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah. No, I think I'd rather wait.
You're gonna wait.
I'm really scared, I don't know to lie. I'm extremely scared. I'm really, like, even now, I'm 99.9% close to tears. I'm a filmmaker myself, you know, and I always have fear of things might always go wrong, you know, each and every day, you know. But at the same time, that fear, I always try to find a path, like, to overcome it. And at the same time, not to try to run away from it. If this is the situation, then be it, you know, then be it. And at the same time, like, I think fear is not an enemy of progress, you know.
Right. What I need for you to do from here out now is, after having gone through that, you wanting to test.
Yeah.
Okay. I just need you to put your name over there, your signature with the date. You can just put your date of birth over there, and then just read through this, your signature there with the date, and that you're requesting counselling. Please. Have you been tested before?
Yes.
How long ago was that?
It's been a while, I don't know.
4 years, 3 years?
2.
2. Just to have an idea, and you were?
Negative.
Negative at that stage, okay. Do you know the HIV status of your partner?
The last time she also tested, she was negative.
Okay. And that's a while ago.
Yeah, because I wanted to come here with her, but she was also scared.
And you're ready now?
Yeah.
Okay. You may fill in that consent form there. I want to ask you another question at the moment.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just prick a finger. I'm going to use this one. You tell me that this one has less nerve endings on and you don't feel it quite as much. Just a little prick there. Just a drop. Thank you. Just press there. In there. It's not diluted. The test takes about between 5 and 15 minutes for the result to come up. Now it's doing that. I'm just going to talk a little bit about a couple of other things. Okay, so usually we say if you think you've come into contact with the virus, you should test immediately, 3 months later, and then 6 months later to be absolutely certain. Because you want to know that you're starting out negative and that you haven't got it already. That just tells me where you've, that you do sometimes have risky behaviour, so you could have exposed yourself to the HIV virus.
I'm extremely scared. But at the same time, I think this is positive fear. You know, it's not a negative fear. It's not like this will be my deathbed or my last supper or something. No, it's not. You know, it's kind of like the same thing with women that says life starts at 40. You know, life started testing on this in this stage. You know. After you tested, like, and you know your status, you know, you live a positive life, a free one.
And if one line develops opposite the C, that's a control line.
Yeah.
That means you're testing negative. The test has worked properly and it's negative. If more than one develops, then you're testing positive. Right. Right. If you were to test positive, what is the first thing that you would do?
I talk to myself.
Okay. My suggestion is that you find someone else you can talk to.
Yeah.
Somebody you can trust, somebody that you can speak to, because if you've tested positive and you share it with somebody else, it just decreases the burden on you phenomenally. Your body, by exercising properly and eating correctly, you can live a long, healthy life. It's exactly the same with the HIV virus. Okay, and I know you're not hearing very much of what I'm saying, but it's necessary to hear it. Some of it will sink in and some of it won't, because it is a scary time and it is kind of nerve-wracking. So I'm not going to keep you in suspense all the time there. You can have a good look.
Good.
Negative? Negative. No infection there at all. We didn't have a choice.
It's a heavy city.
Congratulations. That's a great, isn't that an empowering feeling? It's actually fun.
Yes, you!
If you're uncertain about something, that sort of makes you uncertain and doesn't give you, you feel as though you haven't got control. Okay, basically what it does is if you have knowledge one way or the other, does give you that power. I know that I'm negative, or I know that I'm positive. I know that I've tested. I know exactly where I stand. I know how to live my life from here forward.
I'm calling my girlfriend. I'm calling my girlfriend.
You to come along and she'll feel a lot better.
I'm the man. But at the same time, no sleeping around without a condom.
It's like you said earlier on, it's like getting a fresh start. You've just said it yourself. You're not going to take part in that risky behavior. That's extremely important now.
Can I confess one thing? I lied when I said I did test before.
Okay, that does happen sometimes, yes.
Was this your first test?
Thanks to you guys. Well, guys don't know how I feel. It's like a huge burden has been taken off my shoulders.
It's empowering, isn't it?
It is. It is. It is. I wish I could take more.
You want to do it again?
I need you just to put your name there, sign there, and put the date, and then I'm going to put a stamp on it for you.
Thank you.
The epidemic, what is evidence is that South Africa is making really great strides in trying to address this. I mean, obviously AIDS is a global problem, and we're 30 years into the epidemic now. And in fact, towards the end of last year, we developed a strategy as UNAIDS as we move into the future, saying it's now time to get to zero. And hence our new UNAIDS strategy, which is really around what we are calling 3 zeros, really aiming and saying it is possible to achieve and really target 0 new infections, HIV infections, 0 preventable deaths due to HIV and AIDS, and 0 stigma and discrimination related to HIV. So globally, there's certainly been progress over the 30 years, but there's a lot that we know that could be done. The reason the virus is able to survive so long is because there's a wrong perception, and it is wrong, that HIV is in certain communities and not mine.
In the United States, CDC estimates that there are approximately 1.2 million persons living with HIV infection. HIV is a disease that takes advantage of marginalized populations. You know, in the United States, it disproportionately affected men who have sex with men. Today in the United States, HIV disproportionately affects marginalized persons of low socioeconomic status, of color, and particularly people living in the Southeast United States.
Here in Atlanta, about 87% of the women who are diagnosed with HIV are Black. So that in and of itself is an immediate parallel to the burdensome role that women of African descent play in the global epidemic of HIV. When you have someone like a President Thabo Mbeki, who was an AIDS denier in the early 2000s, and a lot of people can hold him as his Minister of Health. We can hold him responsible for probably the unnecessary deaths of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. Well, that's not that much different from what the gay community had to hold Ronald Reagan accountable for in the late 80s, for denying the fact that HIV and AIDS was a public health issue, that it wasn't just this issue of gay behavior, that he, up until just right at the end of his second term, was also an AIDS denier in his own way. And so the mobilization of ACTA, AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, and how that moved beyond Reagan and even into the Clinton years, even holding Bill Clinton's feet to the fire, if you will, was the same type of movement, albeit a little later, that started with the Treatment Action Campaign in holding Mbeki, and then later holding Zuma and the next presidents accountable.
all the member states of the UN got together, all 189 plus countries, saying that this is a possible vision, and a lot of countries worldwide have actually adopted those 3 zeros as their own national goals. In order to be able to do that, we're going to have to do things very differently.
On a trip to Tanzania, as I was walking through Dar es Salaam, I realized that every single person that I was seeing had a mobile phone.
Even if you are a very rural, poor person in South Africa, you might not have access to clean drinking water, you might not have access to electricity, but chances are very good that you will have access to a mobile phone.
We realized that there's this incredible opportunity to utilize the mobile technology platform to deliver other services as well, not just commercial services. By using social methods and getting people to spread the message from person to person.
You can harness the social effect of groups of friends and groups of people influencing each other in doing something really life-saving, like going for an HIV test.
This is how we communicate today. This is how we get our information. These new social platforms are enabling our messages and our influence to travel farther and faster than ever before. We have to decide as a society if we want to harness this power to get people to click on Facebook ads or to make the world a better place. This is an awesome responsibility, and we have to all realize that in essence, we're all role models now.
Interactions on a mobile phone can actually lead to real behavior change. Communities and social networks can actually influence an individual to take action.
If you work on a sustained basis in communities with young people, you'll see that that energy is there, that development is happening, that communities are improving, that things are getting better. And a lot of that is sustained by this social energy, by the excitement of people together deciding that they're going to keep things going.
And still today, like I spend maybe 2 hours or 3 hours before I go to bed replying on Facebook messages, BBM, you know. I kind of like it. I like it. Yeah, I like it a lot. You gotta be able to stand up at the end of the day and do something for yourself.
We used to have to count on governments or NGOs to spread the information that would generate social change. But the transition from corporate media to social media has made social movements accessible to all of us, even the most marginalized populations. We all now have the power to create social change in the palm of our hands and in our pockets right now. I too am an influencer. You too are an influencer.
This is something that each and every person needs to do. As I said before, like this needs to be like a part of your of our lifestyle. You know, it needs to be part of our lifestyle. If ever like you wake up in the morning and take a bath, you know, it should be something that you say like each and every 3 months I must go to test. You know, it should be something that you sleep, that you eat, that you dream, you know.
When you convince one person to change their behavior and then they convince at least some substantial fraction of their friends to change their behavior, it creates a cascade or a contagion of HIV testing through the population.
It's nice to know, isn't it? Yeah. It's a good feeling.
It's now time to get to zero. 0 new HIV infections, 0 discrimination, 0 AIDS-related deaths.
To realize a future without HIV, we've got to get everybody tested and treated. Everyone has a role to play in preventing HIV infection. Get tested, know what your status is. If you're positive, get treatment. That's part of our personal responsibility as a citizen, every one of us.
This is our platform. This is our medium, and we're going to decide what kind of culture we develop with it.
Stigma can only exist where people are continuing to choose not to be informed and not to take that information to see, think, and feel differently about that information.
The science of social influence and these new interventions have the power to spread positive social change at a scale that we've never seen before.
By seeing someone from their community, it really encourages them to learn and to pass on the message, because that's the idea, for them to receive the message and not just to sit down with the information, but to pass it on to other people. So
Kamarengo, Simalibo, Malibo, 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 it's Upage, 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 Umano, Umano, Umano.